guys, welcome back to another episode of the Whisky Diaries. My name is Martin Lang, and today we're going to be talking about Westland Distillery. This is an American single malt distillery. It's the first one of its kind. They started in 2011 in Washington, Seattle, or Seattle, Washington, the other way around. Now, I was quite impressed about this whiskey. We have reviewed only Scottish whiskey so far. We are going into the American whiskey now. To be honest, I personally myself, and this is a subjective opinion, is that I don't particularly like bourbon. Bourbon for me is very plain flavored. Like if you review 10 bourbons, the main characteristics that you're gonna get out of all those 10 bourbons is vanilla and toffee. Is basically, yes, some of them are more complex, some of them are better than others and all that stuff, but there's always going to be a predominant flavor, and that is because American bourbon is highly regulated. And we will do a review on it, but the fact is that you don't have a lot of room to wiggle and to do different things like in the Scottish industry, where you can age whiskey in whatever you want as long as you age it for a certain amount of time. And your distilling techniques and filtration process and so on and so on. There's hundreds of different ways of making whiskey, and that's why single malt can have the same amount of flavors as wine, as a very complex wine. It's a different type of whiskey. In this case, though, they're making a single malt in America. And this is very interesting because they're very open and clear about what they do, what they do. If you go to the website and you look at the core range, they tell you what barley they use, what ABV, what ppm, and so on and so on. So Westland in itself got established in 2011. In 2014, the first sherry wood Westland got released. It's a 46% ABV, and it's been 100% in a sherry cask. The interesting story about this as well, this is easily found on the website, is that they cut the wood in the south of America, and then they send it all the way to Spain. In Spain, the cask gets made, the sherry gets put in, and then it gets sent back to America to finish on bourbon, which is actually quite hard process, and it's actually quite impressive. Apparently, as well, what I've been reading about this as well is that Washington produces some of the best barley in the world, and the climate itself allows it to age more accordingly to what a Scottish whiskey will do. Another interesting fact is that obviously, Westland, even though it's a single malt, they decided to spell whiskey with an EY instead of a Y. Obviously, if you know this, whiskey that is made in Scotland or that has a Scottish approach to making whiskey is it's spelled without an E. So Japanese whiskey, for instance, they decided to spell Japanese whiskey without the E. And that's because Japan takes a very Scottish approach to whiskey, so they want to call it whiskey. Now, also, obviously, American having a massive influence of Irish immigrants, they decided to spell it with an EY, because Irish whiskey is spelled with an EY. So anyway, regardless of that, that's just a little bit of information. They use the other thing that is very particular about this is that they use 5 types of malt. They all are type of barley, but they all have different names. They're all available in the website as well, and I really appreciate the transparency from that, so you can read everything about it. Anyway, without further ado, we'll just go and try the whiskey itself. By the color, even though it's only 3 years or 36 months. The color is actually quite sherry-like. It's a pretty darker one. The core range as well, before I forget, the core range, they said do an American oak, obviously. They do a peated cask, so it's a peated whiskey, which they use a blend of peated malt and unpeated malt. So a malted barley, and then they do the sherry cask. And also, if you've been watching some of my videos, you know I'm a sucker for sherry cask. I just love it. That's very interesting, actually. Oh, that has like the spicy notes coming through from sherry, but there's a certain sweetness, I'm assuming, from the different malts that they use. Ooh, that is delicious. Still not, like, you would not be able to distinguish this as a single malt per se compared to Scottish. Like, it has a certain spiciness and a certain aftertaste that is just different to what you will get on a single malt. But it is actually very impressive and delicious. And if you can get a hold on a bottle, I will highly recommend it. It's $150, so it's not a super expensive whiskey. So hopefully you like this review. Make sure that if you have any recommendations or any whiskies that you would like to get reviewed, let us know. We can definitely get them and definitely do it. Thank you very much for listening, and Slanjaba.